To be or not to be, good at building blenders. A Marvel fanfiction written on AO3 by Ranger616. Tony ordered a blender. He could have just built one, but he was working on a project right now, thank you very much, and just didn't have the time. Peter had broken the blender last night making a BLT smoothie, because apparently it was just too much work to eat the bloody sandwich. So, Tony had ordered another blender, and it had just come in the post. Friday had alerted him that the post had come, and sent the packages up to him. Tony looked through the stack of letters. 2 from Peter's school because technical stool was too low to send an email, 1 from Steve and Bucky, and a parcel containing the parts he needs to fix his car and the new blender, which he took to the kitchen to unpack. He opened the directions from the booklet and began to piece the thing together. He plugged it in and pressed the button, and nothing happened. Tony pressed it again, and again, nothing. He mumbled in annoyance, then diving back into the instructions to find where he had screwed up. He rebuilt it 3 times, but still to no avail. The blender just would not work. And then Peter came in. "Hey, Tony," he said, munching on what looked to Tony like mini Oreos. "The guys are going to be here in 15 minutes. Thor says he's on his way." Tony grumbled, tinkering with the mechanism that spun the blades. Peter set the cookies down and asked to help. Tony begrudgingly allowed him to tinker with the thing for a while. Eventually, Peter got the blades whirring and went to stick some fruits in the blender. He tossed in some bananas, strawberries, blueberries, and whatever else happens to be in the refrigerator, and turned the blender on. It whirred happily for about 30 seconds or so before making a funny noise and the top came flying off, sending puree fruit all over Tony's nice clean ceiling. Peter stared at the goop for a moment as it dripped down into his hair, before Tony rushed in and yanked the blender cup out of the wall, just as there was a knock on the door. "Boss, Thor has arrived," Friday announced, as a shout came from the kitchen door. "Man of iron, man of spiders, what sorcery has caused this untidiness?" Thor bellowed, looking at the mess all over the ceiling, bench, floor, and Peter. "Hello, Thor," Peter said cheerfully as Tony grumbled. "We can't get the new blender to work. Do you want to try?" "Why not?" Thor wondered jovially, walking over and placing his hammer down right beside the fruit bowl. 20 minutes later, the kitchen was clean. Natasha, Sam, Bruce, and Scott were laughing their heads off as Steve, Bucky, and Thor read through the blender instructions and put the machine back together, piece by piece, while Peter and Tony glared from the corner. "I think that blender was made for lesser minds than ours, Pete," Tony said, and Peter nodded in agreement, watching Steve press the button and the blender began to happily puree some bananas with no issue at all. "What's it supposed to do?" Bucky asked, turning to Peter and Tony. Peter mumbled, cheeks turning slightly red. Bucky turned to Steve for a high five. "Would you look at that? Looks like we outsmarted these 2 brainiacs." Tony rolled his eyes. Yeah, good for you. Gloat later, ancient beings. We've got work to do."